Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Teach Educational Round session. Before I continue, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. Also, there is no video for today's session, only audio. Perfect. Thank you very much. So today's session is Tobacco Interventions for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis populations, and our faculty presenter is Lisa Beedie from Cancer Care, Ontario. So if you are interested in obtaining a letter of completion for today's session, you must have completed the registration and pre-learning assessment accessible through our website. If you haven't done so already, it will remain open for the next 15 minutes. Also, you must sign in to view the live webinar session for the full hour using your first and last name. If you have signed in as a guest without your typing in your first or last name, please do email me by end of day today. And then following the webinar, I'll send out the evaluation and post-learning assessment. These webinars are being live tweeted. Follow the CAMH Nicotine Dependent Services on Twitter at @PSQuitSmoking. To follow the live tweeting or to post your questions or comments, use hashtag #TeachWebinar. So again, our faculty presenter is Lisa Beedie, and she's a proud Ojibwe from Beau Soleil First Nation. Prior to her Cancer Care Ontario's Aboriginal Tobacco Wise Lead South position, Lisa served as the Health Promotions Coordinator, primarily in smoking cessation at Healing Lodge in Southern Ontario for a number of years. She holds an Honours Diploma from Georgian College's Native Community and Social Development Program and a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. Lisa was recently recognized for her efforts in smoking cessation by receiving a Tobacco-Free Champion Award from the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. Disclosures? No disclosures for Lisa. The TEACH curriculum and slides were developed and compiled with funding from the Government of Ontario, specifically the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. Contents of the slides are primarily based on evidence-based guidelines from the following sources. These materials, as well as the verbal presentation and any discussions, set out only general principles and approaches to assessment and treatment and do not replace the need for individualized clinical assessment and treatment plans. Okay, now before I hand it all over to Lisa, I'm just going to ask you guys a few polling questions just to get a sense of the group today. So here's the first question. What type of organization do you work for? Okay, so a large majority of you are from a public health unit. The next question is, what region are you from? And I've already seen a lot of people typing in the comments that you are outside of the province. That is very good to see. Wow, so 24% of you are from outside of Ontario. I don't think we've had that in a very long time. Thank you so much for answering. And the last question is, what discipline do you belong to? Try to make this bigger. Okay, an overwhelming majority registered nurses. Thank you so much for participating in the polls. And now I'm going to hand it over to Lisa.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sego, my friends out there. Honey, bonjour to all my First Nation Inuit and Métis relatives, and everybody else. Thank you for spending this time with me today. So some of the learning objectives to talk about is I'm going to describe the difference between traditional and commercial tobacco. The determinants of health affect the cause and prevalence of commercial tobacco use in First Nation, Inuit, and Métis populations. Models of tobacco cessation interventions for First Nation, Inuit, and Métis clients in their own community and practice settings. And we're going to talk a little bit about a motivational interviewing. So with this first slide that I have, many of our people are visual people. So this one picture describes, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. So I want you to keep in mind this one comment of tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I may learn. So this is the whole kind of premises of today's webinar. So I'm going to share with you, I work at Cancer, Ontario on the Aboriginal Tobacco Program. My job is what's called Tobacco Wisely. So here at Cancer, Ontario, in our Aboriginal Cancer Care Unit, we don't take a pan approach to our First Nation Inuit and Métis population. We work with each individual First Nation Inuit and Métis groups, because each one of us are distinct in language, culture, and beliefs, just as everybody on the webinar are unique in your language, culture, and practices. So my hope is that I've given you a snapshot of each people and how it relates to the work in tobacco cessation, prevention, and protection, and the work that we all do. Also, building productive relationships and work with First Nation Inuit and Métis groups to formalize relationships based on trust and mutual respect. So this one, the traditional and commercial tobacco culturally specific context of tobacco use. So this is a polling question that I have for everybody out there. How many people think that all First Nation Inuit Métis people have a sacred relationship to tobacco? I'll get you to poll. So we're good, Tanya? So that's good. Majority of people I've got the answer right with 50%. So not all of our First Nation Inuit and Métis people have a sacred relationship to tobacco. And an example of this would be the Inuit. There is no sacred tobacco with the Inuit community. Traditionally, Inuit society was smoke-free. The Inuit did not use tobacco until, from my understanding, 100 years ago. At first, it was mainly men who smoked, and it was forbidden for Inuit youth to use tobacco. In the 1940s, smoking became more prevalent among all Inuit, and today have the highest rates of lung cancer in the world. So the Inuit did not smoke traditionally. You can't grow it, you can't make it, you can't manufacture it. It was introduced to the Inuit population through trade and through newcomers coming up to the north. Also, to keep in mind, too, with working with our Inuit population, family is at the heart. And I would say this widespread with all First Nation Inuit Métis is that family is at the heart of each one of our cultures and our traditions. So in this picture, it shows the difference between commercial tobacco and sacred tobacco. So in a lot of our First Nations and Métis communities, there is a sacred relationship to Sama. So it's got a healing property to it, as opposed to commercial tobacco that has that duality of what we call the duality to it. So traditional tobacco honors the creator and is governed by cultural protocol for spiritual, ceremonial, and cultural uses. Manufacture or commercial tobacco causes sickness, disease, and death in our communities and is governed by marketing of addiction. For First Nations and Métis, traditional tobacco is used in this context of spirituality. As you can see in the poster, know the difference. It encompasses our 7 grandfather teachings and differentiates between commercial and sacred. An example of this is an habitual addiction, and the other is a gift from the Creator. So something to consider in your program is to bring in an elder to talk about the difference between sacred versus commercial in programming. Offering, giving thanks to Sama for the people, the animals, water, the moon, the sky, Mother Earth, and so on. Even in the work we do at CCO in Cancer, Ontario, and the Aboriginal Tobacco Program, we bring in an elder to share with the knowledge regarding the sacredness of the teachings around tobacco. So this is out of respect and protocol by bringing in an elder to share those teachings and that information with the people that we're working with. So we're going to talk a little bit of the social determinants of health and what about in the First Nation Inuit Métis context. So according to Health Canada, social determinants of health, the social determinants of health influences the health of populations. We all know that. They include income and social status, social support networks, education, employment, working conditions, social environments, physical environments, personal health practices, and coping skills, healthy child development, gender, and culture. But and there's another aspect to the social determinants of health as well. While the population health approach is relevant to policy decisions to maximize its relevance, it is critical that this approach be implemented in accordance with the values, attitudes, and aspirations of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people that we work with. The traditional First Nation, Inuit, and Métis concept of health incorporates the mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and social aspects of health. Among the social determinants of health is a lack of self-determination, because there is a gap between Indigenous people and other Canadians. Social marginalization, racism, residential school relocation, self-esteem, and to go a step further, location, services provided or not, social context, discrimination, colonialization, access to health, and other social services. So First Nation, Inuit, Métis people have a voice, they have stories, and the approach must meet the needs of the people that we are working for, and with a lens that is awareness of health. So we need to look at a better delivery model with First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. Be involved and let First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people be involved in the design of a program. Be informed of what has contributed as helpers. Be informed of what has contributed to poor health. Also, call safety. Work with our First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people to work with us and not to us. And just to give you a little bit more in-depth work in terms of the relationship. At CCO, we have developed what's called the Aboriginal Relationship and Cultural Competency course. So it's a module-based. It's free. It's at the elearning.cancercare.on.ca if you want some more information, and you get 0.5 ManPro credits for taking that course. So those are kind of the things that we have to be mindful of when we go into the communities, or even considering on working with First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people, of what are we going to bring in the context of how we can help, and how can we build this relationship and this bond together to improve the better outcomes of our health. So I know somebody said, can you please write the link? Just a suggestion for the course. We'll definitely share the link at the end of the presentation. No worries. Also, so just to give you some more information around the stats of the smoking rates. So when we look at this graph, we can see that older First Nation people do not smoke, with approximately 75% identified that they did not smoke. Also, the highest reported smoking is with our youth, ages between 18 and 29, with approximately 58.4. And the second highest was in the age group between 40 and 49. So some of our work at Cancer Care Ontario and the Aboriginal Tobacco Program regarding prevention and youth is providing information on the effects of smoking, having conversations and discussing, because a lot of youth are very, very intelligent, and they actually share what they see, what they hear, and what they feel in the community around commercial tobacco use and health within the community. So we have those conversations with them regarding cigarette use. Additionally, we also utilize Ultimate Frisbee with prevention messaging within our First Nation, Inuit, First Nation so far, and Inuit schools within our communities around prevention. So from grades 5, 6, 7, and 8, we bring in World Champion Ultimate Frisbee, so they learn about physical activity as well as preventing the uptake of commercial tobacco use. And we utilize that in a number of methods and means that we do for that. So, and with the other age groups, we do cessation with this age group as well. And we also bring in partners, if need be, in terms to help us, such as CAMH. We can do a stop study within the First Nation communities, perhaps some Aboriginal Health Access Centers, we've done that. So those are some of the things that we've done to look at commercial tobacco use amongst our First Nation, Inuit, and Métis population here in the province of Ontario. So Inuit smokers. So according to the 2012 Aboriginal People Survey, 52% of Inuit age 15 and older smoked cigarettes daily, and another 9% were occasional smokers. So I can tell you, in the work that I've done, I've worked with the Inuit population around smoking cessation, protection, and prevention. They have some of the highest as people can out there. I'm sure many of you are, as the poll stated, nurses. They have some of the highest smoking lung cancer rates within the country, even the world. So I feel it's a privilege and an honor to work with their Inuit brothers and sisters and sharing the message around commercial tobacco, especially since it was introduced to them by non-Indigenous people. So it's a great learning relationship because it's a reciprocal relationship. They learn from me as well as I learn from them. So that's what a true relation is about learning, listening, and moving the messaging forward. And it takes every participant in order to do that. And sometimes you have to use unconventional methods in terms to getting that messaging out. So in this graph, we're going to talk about Metis adults currently smoking in Ontario. So the highest rates of smoking are found among the Metis adults between the ages of 20 to 29 and between the ages of 45 and 64 in this age group. Smoking rates for the Métis people in these age groups are particularly high among those aged 45 to 64. These rates are nearly double those found in non-Aboriginal population. So for the Métis and non-Aboriginal Ontarians, rates of smoking drop significantly at the age of 65 and older. The reason for the lower prevalence of smoking found in older adults is not clear. It may be due to increased tobacco-related deaths within this age group, or it could reflect higher rates of successful quitting. For an example, many older adults quit smoking for health reasons or following their doctor's advice. So of tobacco among Ontario Métis people, the historical role that tobacco has played in the Métis way of life over many hundreds of years is an important consideration in designing smoking cessation interventions for this group. So according to the MNO, the historical role that tobacco has played in the Métis way of life over many hundreds of years is an important consideration in designing smoking cessation interventions for this group. So I wouldn't just say for the Métis, but as well as for the Inuit and the First Nations people in this province. Historical use of tobacco in the Métis culture was tobacco use among Métis has been influenced by two strong cultural traditions. A First Nations tradition in which tobacco is regarded as a medicinal plant with both ceremonial and social use such as smudging, and in giving or exchanging of tobacco as a sign of respect. And the more specific role and use of tobacco in Métis historical traditions. So an example of this would be many Métis who lived around the Great Lakes were voyageurs. Voyageurs typically worked about 14 hours a day for many weeks at a time, paddling large canoes laden with the goods for many thousands of kilometers. During these long and arduous journeys, a stop was made for a few minutes each hour to allow them to rest and have a pipe. This event was so important among the early voyageurs that distance came to be measured in pipes. 3 pipes might equal 20 kilometers of travel, or a 3-kilometer lake might be described as a 4-pipe journey. So those are some of the contexts in which tobacco has been used historically within the First Nation Métis population. So this vertical represents 90. So this graph shows off-reserve context. So male daily smokers had a higher daily medium cigarette consumption than females in all 3 groups. Off-reserve First Nations, Métis, and non-Aboriginal. First Nation and Métis adult males had higher daily median cigarette consumption to non-Aboriginal males. There were essentially no difference in median daily smoking consumption by women in the 3 groups, off-reserve First Nation, Métis, and non-Aboriginals. So mainstream approaches, do they work? So from my experience, and this is my experience, not all mainstream approaches work. So I'll give you an example of this. So some of the strategies are increasing tobacco taxes annually at the rate of inflation. So if I was to share with you some of the information that our First Nation Inuit Métis people share with me. So in the north, some of our Inuit people pay anywhere between $17 to $30 for a pack of cigarettes. And some people may smoke to 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day. So the price does not always influence within our First Nation Inuit and Métis context of taxes and raising the price because they're still going to smoke. So that doesn't work. And same with plain packaging. There's a lot of new evidence out there around plain packaging. And some countries like Australia are really, as they say, taking the bull by the horn and introducing this plain packaging. Well, within our First Nations, unfortunately, a lot of times they're buying cigarettes in bags. So it's sometimes irrelevant to have plain packaging within the context of First Nation tobacco, right? So it's been our experience that mainstream interventions do not always appear to have reduced commercial tobacco use in our First Nation Inuit Métis communities. And in the view of 50 years of tobacco control experience with the general population. And also it is unrealistic to expect a major reduction in First Nation Inuit Métis smoking rates without a robust, sustained, and community-driven investment of talent and funding. So here at Canterbury, Ontario, there's 3 of us in the province of Ontario to work with all First Nation Inuit and Métis organizations in the province around smoking cessation, protection, and prevention. Additionally, I get calls from other partnering organizations to help support with the efforts around commercial tobacco as well. So like my friend Lauren out in Alberta, hi Lauren, and my friend Deb Martin that's out there. It's a very honoring and humbling privilege that I get to meet like-minded people around not only the province of Ontario, but within the context of Canada and further with my friend Raglan, who's from Australia, to share around some of the approaches that people are doing in the communities around smoking cessation, protection, and prevention. So, and at Canterbury, Ontario, some of our approaches, like we've seen earlier, are traditional versus commercial tobacco, the health effects of smoking, reason why people smoke, the challenges of quitting, sometimes, and that's a lot of times is involved in trauma, dealing with stress and anxiety, dealing with withdrawal, talking about support system, preparing people to quit, and dealing with sabotages and relapse and trying to help people stay smoke-free. So those are some of our approaches that we do at Canterbury, Ontario on the Aboriginal Tobacco Program, as well as utilize some of our partners, such as the health units. I've worked with some of the health units, public health units, CAMH, Youth Yachty at the Lung Association, friendship centers, all kinds of partners that we use in order to get the messaging out. So I'm not sure if everybody's aware that First Nation and Inuit people in Canada, if their status or have an N card, nicotine replacement therapies are covered through non-insured health benefits. So a lot of times people will say, well, you can just buy the patch off the shelf or the gum or the inhalers, that you don't need a prescription for it. But for our First Nations and Inuit, if they get a prescription from a doctor, a nurse practitioner, or some pharmacies will prescribe, then they don't have to pay for it. And this is a fiduciary responsibility that the federal government has with our First Nations and Inuit through our treaties. So I'd like to share that with people that are working with our population, that it is covered. And if anybody has problems, to call the non-insured health benefit, their local non-insured, and ask for assistance regarding the nicotine replacement therapies and non-nicotine prescriptions such as Champix and Zyban. So our tobacco-wise approach, like I said right from the beginning, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. So we do that by learning, by listening, seeing, or doing. So those are some of the things that we do. And we meet our First Nation, Inuit, Métis people that we work with, their needs through different mediums. So as everybody knows in health promotion, pre-planning, what am I going to share? So what kind of information are you going to share? You might think about a needs assessment before you do any kind of intervention, or just, even though it says needs assessment, just to have that conversation with people who you might be collaborating work on. What do I need to provide? What do I need to bring? Is transportation going to be an issue? Do I need to implement food? Some of those kinds of pre-thinking that needs to be done before you implement the program. Design the program. You might think about how many weeks, or if this is a one-time workshop, think of those kind of things that you like to do in the time frame. Implementation, where is it going to be held? Is it going to be at the community center, the church, at the health center? So all of those things need to be discussed. Evaluation, thinking about an evaluation, how effective was it? And also in the evaluation, a lot of times people think about evaluation as a measurement of managing success. Even though a lot of times in the work that we do, the whole end goal is to help people quit smoking commercial tobacco, which I totally agree. However, you don't know that if you have had one person come to your workshop or through your meeting and you're disappointed with just one person coming, don't look at it as a disappointment. Look at it as a blessing, because within our First Nation and Inuit and Métis communities, that one person is going to go home and tell one person and tell one person and tell one person and share that information with another person. So a lot of people will get that information. So a lot of times people worry about the numbers. Numbers, we need to have 25, we need to have 10, we need X amount of numbers in order to do this workshop. What we call moccasin telegram is much stronger sometimes than we really are aware of. So those are some of those things that you need to consider in terms of meeting the needs through different mediums. So invite and expand efforts to education about the effectiveness of smoking cessation protection and prevention, utilizing a variety of teaching modalities and groups. One-on-ones, be flexible and meet each learner's needs, provide information that will overlap with information. What I do is from one week to the next, start with a bit of what the previous week sharing was about. I give people some work to think about what transpired in the previous week and ask anyone if they have questions or comments. Because sometimes things resonate later when you're not in the group or sitting, because recapping and reinforcing the information through each week's learning session. So in each slide, for the presentation, I try to reinforce the different learning styles from the beginning such as the end, such as the quote, tell me and I'll forget, because a lot of times, even myself, I'll forget. Teach me and I may remember, but involve me and I'll learn. So let me be part of the process. So a lot of times at the end of a session that I'll do, I'll ask group, is there anything that you'd like to learn or anything new that I haven't shared with you this week that I can share next week with you? And they'll say, well, do you have information on this, or do you have information in that? So then that spawns something for me to bring for the following week. So those are some of the things that we do in terms of smoking cessation protection and prevention, in terms of the different mediums of ways of sharing and learning in the communities. And we also utilize videos, talking circles if need, other kinds of hands-on tools, because a lot of times our people are visual people, right? So those are kind of the things that we use at CCO and the Aboriginal Tobacco Program. So our big mantra is our tobacco-wise approach and smoke-free places. So that is very important. So these are some of the tools that we have developed at Ontario on the Aboriginal Tobacco. So instead of having the strictly no smoking signs, the one on your left indicates our air is sacred and so is our territory. Please do not use commercial tobacco here. Please smoke 9 meters away. So this is just to reinforce that message of our air being sacred, and so is our land. And same with on the right side, please keep our air crisp and clean. Please refrain from smoking or move 9 meters away. And that's for Inuit population. So it's kind of designed specifically for each nation. And these are something that we share with the community in terms of what they consider sharing this within their First Nation, Inuit, or Métis organization around smoke-free spaces. So some of the other tools in terms of the mediums that we use for tobacco-wise approach, this goes back to the quote, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, and involve me and I learn. So these are hand-on tools. This Clever Catch ball, it's fun, it's interactive, and it's being a part of the group, and it has questions and spawning a discussion, especially with people who may be shy and won't want to share in a group. This is a means of getting that information out. Also in the middle is a picture of a cigarette, a giant cigarette, of what is involved in a cigarette. A lot of times people, if they do buy cigarettes with the messaging on it, people are desensitized to that messaging, where this giant, they get to learn, talk, and hold, and really digest of what's in a cigarette. And then on the far right one is tar in a jar, and I'm sure many of you have seen this, these tools utilized, or may have utilized them yourself. So those are some of the hands-on teaching tools that we use so that people can see, feel, touch, and learn. So in terms of some of the mainstream approaches that we've partnered up with Simcoe Muskoka Regional Health Unit. They've implemented this Bad Ways to Be Nice campaign, and we've just revamped some of the information to be more specific for First Nation, Inuit, and Métis population, and that will be coming out. So this is like a photo booth that shows don't give cigarettes to teens. And even though this is primarily the health unit utilized for youth, a lot of our First Nation, Inuit, and Métis adult people, even our seniors, want to be a part of this because they really believe that the messaging around don't give cigarettes to teens is important. So everybody participates in that what's that, health campaign. Also, me incorporate humor. Everybody loves to laugh. So incorporating humor into the discussion is necessary in terms of learning styles and to break up some of the mood of uncertainty. This is also a part of who we are as a people. Who doesn't like to kid around and have some humor in the thing? And this one picture, I'm sure lots of people have seen it before. It's kind of like the Marlboro Man and his horse died. Well, we say, well, his horse died because of secondhand smoke. And a lot of times people start laughing based on this picture, and then they can kind of grasp the information around secondhand smoke as well as learning as well, right? And having humor. So in terms of motivational interviewing, so we always focus on exploring and resolving ambivalence and centers on motivational process within the individual that facilitates change. So we have a person-centered approach from guiding, strengthening, and motivating to change. I'm sure many of you guys are experts at motivational interviewing, and as everybody, and Alex at CAMH is a pro at motivational interviewing. A lot of times I've learned many things by watching, learning, and being a part of motivational interviewing. So it's a listening skill, and not always trying to find the answer from the person that you're working with, but rather letting them come to a discover of their behavior and how they can change it. So I would refer everybody to go back to CAMH's motivational interviewing expert, as they are the motivational, in my opinion, motivational interviewing. I just listen to people and we go from there and share. So that's a little bit more about the motivational interviewing. Also, so that kind of wraps up some of the things that we do at Cancer Care Ontario. So to sum it up, we listen, we build relationships, there's trust, respect, we try and implement knowing the differencing, bring in appropriate people such as elders, tailor programs for First Nation, Inuit, Métis communities, be flexible, and being in the same, bring in some humor, and most of all, remember that they are the experts as well, right? Everything is about learning. I always share with everybody that I come into contact, even myself. I'm very mindful of every day is a school day as well for me too. Every day is a learning day, and I need to learn everything. So we're not all experts on everything. So we learn from each other. So those are the things that we do regarding the work we do at CCO. So I see that we have some questions. Tanya, should we answer some of these questions?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so Aaron asked, I think second or third-hand smoke risk to pets and animals is a great motivation for some people. That is true. That is very true. So in the terms second and third-hand smoke, there's hands-on ways that we describe second and third-hand smoke so that people could be a part of and understand really what second and third-hand smoke is, not only for themselves, but for their families, their community, and for everything that is around them. So Kelly asked, is the Clever Cat ball specific to First Nation, Inuit, and Métis tobacco information or just general information about commercial tobacco? It's just general information around commercial tobacco, but it's applicable in the work that we do around some of the discussions of why you start smoking, peer pressure, to look cool, all of those reasons. So those are some of the things that we do regarding our First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. Sarah asked, does the medicine wheel apply to all First Nation, Inuit, and Métis or just First Nations? It doesn't apply to the Inuit and First Nations. I would say First Nations, yeah. So in terms of questions, so and like we go back to the presentation, there's no a pan approach. So every First Nation, Inuit, Métis are individuals, and that's where it comes of having the conversation. So same with in the communities, not every First Nation community are going to have a belief sacred tobacco. So then you ask in that pre-planning stages of your program, is this something that you would like to see in a program? Is this applicable? Having elders come in and sharing teachings. Some communities might be offended that you might automatically just think that because not all communities follow the traditional ways. Some communities may very much be in a Christian community. So those are some of the learnings and the conversations that you have prior to coming into the community. So Tricia asks, where can we learn more about traditional tobacco? So learning more about traditional tobacco is learning from the elders and being a part of a ceremony, if we're privileged to be a part of that learning open. And a lot of people are very open to learning about the traditional tobaccos, and a lot of elders will share about traditional tobacco. So I would say ask your local First Nation community, is there an elder that can share around traditional tobacco teachings with our organization, our group, or our community? Yes. Is there any campaigns developed to educate First Nation and Inuit Métis about the high smoking prevalence in these communities and the health effects of such? So are there any campaigns? There's all kinds of campaigns within, I shouldn't say all, but people don't realize that within our First Nation and Inuit Métis communities, there is health promotion people that are working in health promotion to help with smoking cessation, protection, and prevention. So there are people in the communities that are working and doing that work in the communities. So those are some of the answers I have. I hope I answered some of the questions. Was there any other questions that people had?
I see a question from further back from Alton. Do you have any stats in regards to fines, charges people get? For example, smoking in a car with a child or youth, smoking in non-smoking areas, smoking in homes with youth, etc.
So in Ontario, within our Inuit and Métis population, I would say that it's not maybe as regulated, say, as in the mainstream. So in terms of that question, I'm sure with the mainstream organizations within the health unit, they have tobacco control enforcement officers with that would have all that information. If you like, I can try and get that, but that's not really applicable within our First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. Sometimes within our First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities, they still smoke in like the restaurants or in the bingo halls, or they'll have a section set aside for non-smokers. So those are some of the discussions that we have within the community.
Great. And Jackie asks, where can I get these tools? Jackie, are you referring to these tools?
So those tools, you can just Google Health Edco, and it's a fabulous resource, and you can get many things. Google, the internet is a wonderful resource.
Oh, someone had already said, I ordered my props from Health Edco. There we go.
Yeah. So Alton asks, I can't access Facebook from my work computer. Me neither. So was there any more? I hope this was helpful for everybody.
Sorry, I see one more here. I just thought that. Is the Clever Catchball specific to FNIM tobacco information or just general information about commercial tobacco?
No. So it's just general information around commercial tobacco use.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you got them on, unless we got more. How do you overcome, this is a new question, how do you overcome reluctance in the First Nations community to discourage tobacco use when many in the community benefit financially from the sale of First Nation and contraband cigarettes?
So in terms of that question, that's a political issue around, and that's for our political, our chiefs, our Ogamawas, to have that question. However, many people that are participating in this webinar know the stages of change, right? So a lot of times with the people that I work with aren't even at the pre-contemplation stage, right from the get-go. So that's why I'm saying it's all about building those relationships and learning. So it goes from right from pre-contemplation when I meet them, oh, I'm not going to quit smoking, I don't want to hear this. Once you start having the conversation and letting them be a part of the conversation, then that's when the seeds are planted and change will start. So it's a very powerful, tool to be able to plant those seeds in a good way in terms of motivating people to change. A lot of times it's been my experience that a lot of times this is new information that they've never even heard or really understood before in terms of having the conversation, right? So those are some of the things. So Lauren asks, Lisa, can you talk about tobacco being normalized and strategies to start denormalizing beyond education and smoke-free zones? How do you move a community from pre-contemplation stage into action phases? Any suggestions for recruiting key champions? So as Lauren said, because there's been so years and years and years of commercial tobacco use and being normalized within our First Nation, Indian, and Métis communities, we got to start sharing that messaging around commercial tobacco use and denormalizing beyond smoke-free zones. Smoke-free spaces is just starting within our First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. So you got to look at the province of Ontario. It's taken many years for the smoking rates to decrease in time, and it's going to take that time as well within our First Nation and Inuit and Métis population. It's not going to be overnight. And I think that's part of the discussion too, because a lot of people want to see the smoking rates within our population decrease as well as I do, but it's going to take time, right? So any suggestions for recruiting key champions? Absolutely. There's always key champions within our communities, and I'm sure, Lauren, you know about the odd few key champions that you can call upon to help help in this messaging around commercial tobacco. Just like in this question note box, I see Deb Martin from Six Nations. She's a key champion as well. she's a person that I can call upon and say, or else she can call upon me, and we can collaborate in terms of the work that we can do. So it's just learning and building up those relationships of who those key champions are in the community. So recruiting key champions. So I'll share with you, we're just actually at CCO going to be having a youth forum. We're going to bring in 2 youth from each political territory organization, 2 from the Inuit and 2 from the Métis, and we're going to have these conversations to move the messaging forward, and we'll see as a youth to drive the messaging and to work collaboratively and to move these champions further within our First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. Oh, so Kelly just asked the same question, so I hope that helped in any suggestions for mobilizing youth to lead change in a First Nation and Inuit Métis communities. And also, like I said earlier, with our ultimate frisbee and our prevention messaging with our youth around the school, like I said, sometimes this is the first time they've heard some of these messaging. So these are some of the champions that we have within the communities. Mm-hmm.
So if anyone is joining us over the teleconference line and you have a question, feel free to push *1 on your phone to unmute your line.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello?
Okay, my name is Betty Wu Lawrence. I'm a public health nurse from the city of Toronto. I work a lot with the immigrant ESL communities. I'm Chinese myself. I am so grateful that I can hear your presentation. And I wonder, when young people, they learn from each other, I wonder, would you think that it will be a new approach if I link up the Chinese youth to learn together with the Aboriginal youth to take the challenge of looking at the whole issue of smoking?
So are you talking about a
collaboration? No, collaboration. Yeah, because, like I understand lately a lot of schools like to send their students overseas or from the exposure of different culture. It will excite their learning motivation. I wonder, since we have such a international presence in Canada or Toronto, I wonder, what do you think it will be a good idea? Of course, it's going to take time. I can talk to Dr. Selby and talk about some collaboration between one ethno-racial community youth to the First Nation community youth.
That sounds like a great potential collaboration. I would definitely bring that messaging forward and have the conversation around that. So miigwech for sharing that, and look forward to further collaborations and discussions regarding this potential initiative.
Yeah, and this, for me, my personal interest is for my Chinese youth to learn from the Aboriginal culture and youth, because they're going to grow